FNAF's minigames have become notorious throughout this series for being extremely convoluted and yet often more explicit in explaining the story than the games themselves. Since they have a tendency of being vague, I thought that arranging them by date and seeing how they all fit together would be a good way to understand what they all mean. This is putting every FNAF minigame in chronological order. In the past, I've theorized that Elizabeth's death happens before the crying child, but that theory leaves a lot of unanswered questions. As of now, the pieces seem to fit better together when the crying child dies first. These minigames take place in 1983, as revealed by a TV show named Fredbear and Friends that flashes that date. There's also an Easter egg in the next game, Sister Location, that uses 1983 as a passcode into a secret room in which William would presumably spy on the crying child during the events of these minigames. These minigames show one of William Afton's kids tragically dying, which would become one of the most important events in FNAF. This is believed to be the event that drove William to commit his murders. This minigame also gives us a date to work with, which is something we rarely have the privilege of. Like the previous minigames, these are estimated to take place in 1983, or soon after. It is believed that the crying child's death was the motivation behind Charlie's murder, placing this event somewhere during or after 1983. We also know that the puppet is possessed by Charlie in FNAF 2, which takes place in 1987 as showed on the employees' paychecks. This places these minigames somewhere between 1983 and 1987, more likely closer to 1983. In FNAF 2, we learn that the old location was left to rot for quite a while.
Now, I want you to forget anything you may have heard about the old location. That old restaurant was kind of left to rot for quite a while.
Since Charlie would have died at one of the previous locations, either Fredbear's Family Diner or Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the old location, and the fact that Fredbear's Family Diner most likely closed before Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, we can estimate that this event takes place somewhere on the lower end of our range. In the FNAF novel The Fourth Closet, Charlie dies in 1983, which doesn't necessarily mean she dies in 1983 in the games, but without taking this into account, she could have died anywhere within a 4-year window. So let's say that Charlie's death takes place in 1983 for now, since it doesn't necessarily add or take anything away from its current timeline placement. Both of these minigames are different perspectives of the same event, Charlie Emily's death. This is believed to be William's first murder, despite what Chica says in Ultimate Custom Night, "I was the first, I have seen everything."
I was the first. I have seen everything.
Despite this quote, most people believe that Charlie was William's first victim, her death being in response to his grief over losing his son. Although we don't quite understand the story behind Midnight Motorist, we know that it most likely takes place immediately after the events of Take Cake / Security Puppet. Based on the color of the car, the weather, and the fact that the game files refer to this minigame as later that night, it is almost undeniable that this minigame directly follows the events of Charlie's death. That would make this minigame set on the same night as Take Cake to the Children and Security Puppet. This doesn't get us any closer to identifying the date of this night, but it does help us to position these minigames in their exact places relative to one another. There are many theories as to what this minigame is conveying, some saying that the yellow man is William Afton or Henry Emily, and others saying that he might be the father of one of William's victims. This is undoubtedly one of the most mysterious minigames in the series. Fruity Maze coincides with the first MCI and takes place before FNAF 2. Since it depicts the events leading up to one of the MCI deaths, I put it before the next minigame, even though they likely take place almost simultaneously. Fruity Maze is one of the most straightforward minigames in the series. It depicts a girl running through a maze and collecting fruit. As the game continues, some of the fruit turn into dead dogs, and the tone of the game shifts from upbeat to disturbing. After the game is finished, we see William Afton in his Spring Bonnie mascot suit telling the girl that her dog isn't dead and offering to bring her to see him. This is the story of Susie, the child who possesses Chica, and how William Afton committed his first murder in the MCI. This minigame conveys the first MCI, taking place at the first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza after Charlie's death in 1983, but before 1987 when the events of FNAF 2 take place. We know that the puppet is possessed when he puts the spirits into the animatronics, and in FNAF 2 the classic animatronics are already possessed, making the MCI happen somewhere in the middle. In the FNAF novels, the first MCI takes place in 1985, which again doesn't mean that's when it takes place in the games, but it does give us a little more to work with. Since this date is in our estimated time range of 1983 to 1987, I'm going to suggest that the MCI does take place in 1985. Foxy Go 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 coincides with Fruity Maze. It illustrates the MCI that took place at the first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Initially, Foxy runs into a crowd of children with confetti flying in overall excitement. Then, as the purple guy lurks nearby, Foxy runs into a crowd of children, this time with no confetti and no expressions of any kind, except for that of the sadistic purple guy who stands nearby smiling. Give Gifts Give Life has two conditions that must be met before it can be fit into the timeline. First, Charlotte Emily has to already have died. Second, the first MCI has to already have occurred. Charlie has to have already died because she possesses the puppet at this point, and we see the MCI victims' corpses. Based on these requirements, this minigame would take place somewhere between 1983 and 1987, but after the aforementioned events. It is rational to presume that this minigame takes place soon after Foxy Go Go Go, because the bodies would have been found in the restaurant if the puppet hadn't promptly hid them in the animatronics. We know that the bodies were never discovered, so this minigame likely also takes place in 1985. This minigame shows the puppet possessed by Charlie Emily giving William's victims life again by putting them into animatronic suits. This is important because these are the first animatronics other than a few years after the first MCI, which caused the unfortunate closing of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the restaurant was reopened with new animatronics. On the night of June 26, 1987, William Afton lures two children into a back room and they become the first victims of the second MCI. The number of victims eventually reaches 5, as stated in a newspaper clipping from FNAF 1 and also shown in this minigame. In this minigame, Freddy and the puppet move around Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, trying to stop William Afton from committing murders, but they keep showing up too late. In one of the rooms we can see Mangle walking around and Golden Freddy's limp suit lying on the floor. This is a minigame that stumped me while making this timeline. The animatronic sprites in this minigame seem to resemble the Withered variations, meaning this minigame would take place before 1987. Freddy also appears to be more gold than brown, donning a black hat and tie like Golden Freddy. However, that will have to be discussed in a theory for another day, since the more likely placement for this event is after FNAF 1. According to FNAF AR, the location from FNAF 1 was open from 1988 to 1993, placing Follow Me in or more likely after 1993. Since the restaurant appears to have deteriorated a lot since 1993, it was most likely left to rot for a few years before this minigame takes place. Follow Me shows each of the original animatronics being lured into a back room by Shadow Freddy, where William Afton runs out and dismantles them one by one. Most people believe that in doing this, William is salvaging the animatronics for Remnant, which he uses to make the Funtime animatronics. This minigame directly precedes the Follow Me minigames, presumably taking place the night after Foxy is disassembled, or in the same night. After William finishes taking apart all of the classic animatronics, he is cornered by their spirits whom he unwittingly set free. Thinking on his feet, William climbs into an abandoned Springlock suit and begins laughing as water drips down from the abandoned pizzeria. When the suit is flooded with enough water, its Springlocks fail, crushing William to death inside of his original mascot suit, the same one that he used to commit so many of his murders in. While I have my own opinions as to where Circus Baby's Pizza World fits into the timeline, as of now the most realistic placement for this event is after the Follow Me minigames. Most people agree that William uses the remnant he collects in the Follow Me minigames to create the Funtime animatronics, and while this explanation still leaves unanswered questions, it's the most likely explanation at this time. In the baby minigame, Circus Baby feeds cupcakes to children before winding up alone with Elizabeth Afton. After tempting Elizabeth with an ice cream, Circus Baby opens her stomach and pulls her in, killing her. This event shows another one of William's failures. And since he's presumably dead at this point, he enlists the help of his last remaining son, Michael, to put the pieces back together. This is what motivates Michael to apply to Circus Baby's entertainment and rental, where he eventually succeeds in putting his sister back together. Circus Baby's Pizza World and sister location are two of the most confusing pieces to work with when putting together a timeline. It seems that they have evidence to put them both at the beginning and the end of the timeline. Candy Cadet's stories about 5 things turning into 1 is what most people use as evidence to say that the fun times couldn't be created until the classic animatronics were melted down into one mixture of remnant. This is something I will investigate further in the future. These minigames or cutscenes take place during Sister Location. We don't know exactly when Sister Location takes place, but we know that it takes place after Elizabeth's death. These cutscenes show Michael Afton as he slowly decays from housing entered. As shown at the end of the game, Michael acknowledges that he should be dead, but he isn't, and now he's going after his father.
I should be dead, but I'm not. I'm going to come find you.
Fun with Plushtrap seems to coincide with the nightmares in FNAF 4. A phone call from FNAF 1 can be heard in FNAF 4 as an Easter egg, hinting that it takes place after FNAF 1. Since some of the nightmare animatronics have mouths on their stomachs, it's likely that Elizabeth had already died at this point, and that Circus Baby's stomach claw is what fueled the design choice for them. Realistically, this minigame is probably insignificant. While the games often use minigames to tell parts of the story in a unique way, not every minigame does this. For example, most of the minigames in Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Simulator have nothing to do with the story and exist purely for fun. Unlike most of the other minigames, the hidden minigames in FNAF 3 don't seem to resemble real events. The minigames illustrate the souls of the first MCI finding peace. Even though they seem to be more abstract and fourth wall breaking than actual events, I'm going to order them in their own timeline based on their themes. Stage 01 shows Fredbear and Spring Bonnie dancing on stage at Fredbear's Family Diner, something they last did in 1983. After Charlie Emily's death and the bite of 87, Fredbear's Family Diner would close. This minigame likely depicts Fredbear's Family Diner prior to 1983, a time before the restaurant's image was tarnished by tragedy. To get the cake ending, Fredbear glitches out of bounds and delivers a cake to a lonesome crying child. Although I would like to get into my theory on this minigame and its potential implications to the rest of the story, for now I'll say that this minigame depicts a party held by Toy Chica at the second Freddy Fazbear's location. This would place the event in 1987. In this minigame, Chica collects cupcakes. For the cake ending, Chica leaves the main area, glitching through a wall, and places down a cake for a crying child. There isn't much we know about Balloon Boy, but we know that he was part of the new animatronic line from FNAF 2, placing this minigame also in 1987. In this minigame, Balloon Boy collects balloons while bouncing between platforms. In the hidden cake ending, we see 3 crying balloon boys under a shaded tree. The minigame ends when the final balloon is picked up in a hidden area. Being one of the toy animatronics that was only around in 1987, Mangle's minigame would also take place then. In this minigame, Mangle has to rebuild himself by collecting his animatronic parts while avoiding a child who wants to play. To get the cake ending, Mangle walks past a large shadow of the puppet and makes his way to a cake. When he reaches the cake, the minigame ends. The glitch minigame is one of the reasons why I'm separating these minigames from the others. This minigame shows Shadow Bonnie, or RXQ, in a glitched state, who's able to move between minigames. The player controls RXQ and is able to go from Fredbear's in 1983 to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in 1987 in an instant. This is evidence that the minigames are more representative of the MCI children finding peace than they are real events. Since RXQ bounces from 1983 to 1987, there would be no way to put this into the timeline other than to put it into 2023 when William finally dies and the children are able to rest. Happiest Day takes place after William dies, shortly after 1993. This is because the souls of the animatronics can be set free in this game, but they are still trapped when they corner William in the Night 5 minigame from FNAF 3. This minigame has two endings, the good ending and the bad ending. The bad ending can be accessed by double-clicking on the puppet drawing on Cam 03 in FNAF 3. This version shows the puppet walking through a crowd of happy children to find a crying child at the end of the room. With nothing to do, the player is forced to turn around, leaving the crying child in tears. To get the good ending, the player is required to get the secret cake ending in all of the secret FNAF 3 minigames. Once this is done, double-clicking on the drawing of the puppet will bring the player back to the same party room, but this time standing next to the crying child is 4 children wearing the masks of the classic animatronics. If the player approaches the crying child, a cake will be set down on the table and the crying child will look up, no longer crying. A golden Freddy mask appears on the child only moments before they all vanish, with their masks being left behind and their souls set free. I will note that the good ending isn't canon, but it is a variation of the canon bad ending. Candy Cadet is one of the relevant minigames from Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Simulator. This game is estimated to take place right after FNAF 3 in 2023. This is evident because the Steam description for FNAF 3 states, 3 years after Freddy Fazbear's Pizza closed its doors, and we know that, at least based on the books, the most recent Freddy Fazbear's Pizza closed in 1993. Candy Cadet is a minigame that eats up your coins with an incredibly slim chance of telling you a story. Of his 3 stories, all of them involve combining 5 things into one. Of course, the stories are more detailed than that, but most people find that they are describing the way William melted down the classic animatronics remnant in order to make a new batch of animatronics. Old Man Consequences is a character we first meet in FNAF World, who is more interesting when he returns in Ultimate Custom Night. Ultimate Custom Night is thought to be William's purgatory after his eventual death in Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Simulator. Due to this, Ultimate Custom Night would take place at the same time as Old Man Consequences minigame, in 2023, immediately after William's death. In this minigame, Old Man Consequences asks the player to stop tormenting the demon, who is presumed to be William Afton. This is further implied because in the background you can hear William Afton screaming for help as he is tortured by the animatronics. Princess Quest is a minigame that first appeared in the mobile port of FNAF Help Wanted before being added to Security Breach. This minigame seems to depict the events of Help Wanted, which doesn't have a set date but occurs after Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Simulator. In Princess Quest, there are a total of 16 candles that can be lit throughout the minigame. This is theorized to be a reference to the 16 cassette tapes that Vanny collects in Help Wanted. Interestingly, the princess was originally named Cassidy.png in the game files, before being changed to simply Princess. What's going on, BonSwootch here? Thank you everyone for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed, and I wanted to let those of you who didn't know that this video was chosen by viewers. I set up a poll on my YouTube with a few options of theories I had in mind, and this one won by a large margin. So if you guys like that idea, I'll keep doing that and posting polls and letting you guys decide what kind of videos you're looking to see. I also put up a poll about making modded Minecraft videos, and I didn't get an overwhelming response, but about 66% of people said that they would be interested in seeing that. So I'm considering trying that out at some point. I wanted to also say that a couple days ago I hit 1,000 subscribers, and I just wanted to thank everyone so much for all of the support. Also, at the beginning of the video, I previewed my buddy's new single, If I Can. So if you like the sound of that, go check it out. It's on Spotify, Apple Music, and most other streaming services. I'll leave a link in the description for that. Once again, thank you so much for all of the support, my 1,000 subscribers. Until next Sunday, I'll be reading and responding to comments as best as I can. Thank you so much.